Everything changed on February 24th, 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, an event that catapulted President Volodymyr Zelensky from political reformer into a global symbol of resistance. Despite intelligence warnings and pleas from allies, Zelensky defiantly refused evacuation. Instead, he recorded a powerful video on the streets of Kiev declaring, "We are all here. We defend Ukraine." A defiant message that captivated the world and mobilized his nation's defense. His leadership became immediately iconic, drawing comparisons to Winston Churchill, and helped secure massive military and financial support from the West. Analysts noted that Ukraine reached a strategic turning point that shifted global momentum. Meanwhile, battlefield events fueled hope. Ukrainian forces mounted staunch resistance, notably halting the advance on Kyiv and later achieving a stunning counteroffensive by liberating Kherson, moves that proved Ukraine could not only defend, but reclaim lost territory. At the same time, wartime horrors like the discovery of atrocities in Bucha logically extinguished initial hopes for a quick peace. Zelensky personally visited the site and demanded global accountability, reinforcing the moral clarity of Ukraine's struggle and the brutality of the Russian attack. His combination of emotional appeals, authenticity via social media, and solidarity with citizens elevated international support and shaped him into the face of democratic resistance. In the wake of the invasion, NATO unity strengthened. Europe reconsidered its energy and defense posture, and Zelensky stood at the center of a global response that defined the post-Cold War order of Europe. Since Russia's invasion in early 2022, President Volodymyr Zelensky has risen from national leader to an emblematic figure of global democracy, resilience, and principled defiance. His unfiltered authenticity, rejecting formal podiums, appearing in khaki shirts, delivering heartfelt messages via selfie videos from Kiev, redefined wartime leadership for a new era. In an unprecedented experiment of digital era statesmanship, he tapped into emotional storytelling, often honoring tragedies like 9/11 or the late Queen Elizabeth II, not as headlines but as threads of shared humanity to connect with Western audiences' frontiers. This laid the foundation for what Time editors deemed the most clear-cut person of the year in memory. Zelensky in the spirit of Ukraine, not just for surviving the crisis, but for rallying the world behind democratic values. Beyond Time's seal, he accumulated international state awards, the Legion of Honor, France, Charlemagne Prize, your EU, Sir Winston Churchill Leadership Award, Ronald Reagan Freedom Award, John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award, and the Atlantic Council's Global Citizen Award, all recognizing leadership rooted in moral conviction and democratic resistance. Zelensky's oratory earned him standing ovations across global institutions, from the U.S. Congress and European parliaments to viral public diplomacy via tailored references, Pearl Harbor for U.S., Churchill for UK, Berlin Wall for Germany, a strategy praised for galvanizing the world in a way we haven't seen in decades. This blend of emotional appeal and ethical argumentation turned him into a communicator-in-chief, driving Ukraine's wartime narrative forward with clarity and urgency. Analysts credit him with reframing the geopolitical narrative, prompting NATO unity, Western military aid, energy reforms, and citizen-led support worldwide. His leadership style, where vulnerability meets conviction, where empathy powers strategy, is now studied as a blueprint of modern crisis management. Volodymyr Zelensky, despite being celebrated as a global symbol of courage and democracy, has not been free from challenges and criticism. Before the full-scale Russian invasion in 2022, critics in Ukraine and abroad questioned his background, arguing that a comedian with no prior political experience was unfit to lead a country at war. His promises of anti-corruption reforms were met with skepticism, as Ukraine's oligarch-controlled politics remained a major obstacle, and many felt that his presidency was marked by inexperience and indecisiveness. When the war began, Zelensky was widely praised for staying in Kiev and refusing to flee, but his leadership style also drew criticism. Some Western analysts argued that his constant demands for weapons, financial aid, and sanctions were too aggressive, sometimes straining diplomatic relationships. Russia and pro-Russian commentators dismissed him as a puppet of the West, while human rights groups pointed out that wartime restrictions, such as martial law and media control, limited civil freedoms inside Ukraine. His military strategies also came under fire, particularly during battles like Bakhmut, where critics questioned whether symbolic resistance was worth the heavy Ukrainian casualties. Others accused him of underestimating the threat of a full invasion in the weeks before February 24th, 2022, despite U.S. intelligence warnings. Domestically, Zelensky faced challenges in maintaining unity. Corruption scandals within the defense ministry in 2023 damaged his reputation as a reformer, while economic struggles, displaced civilians, and political opposition made governance increasingly difficult. On the global stage, Zelensky's relentless lobbying for support kept Ukraine at the forefront of international politics, but it also sparked donor fatigue. Some nations in the global south criticized him for focusing too heavily on Western allies, and as the war dragged on, questions arose about whether global unity could be sustained. These challenges and criticisms reveal that while Zelensky is admired as a heroic leader, his presidency is also marked by political risks, complex controversies, and the reality that no leader, no matter how inspirational, is without flaws. Volodymyr Zelensky's legacy is already one of the most remarkable in modern political history. Rising from the world of entertainment as a comedian and actor, he transformed into a wartime leader whose courage and resilience became a global symbol of democratic resistance. His decision to remain in Kyiv during the full-scale Russian invasion of 2022 will likely be remembered as the defining moment of his presidency, inspiring not only his people, but also democratic nations worldwide. Zelensky's legacy is tied to his ability to unite Ukrainians under a common national identity, to reshape global perceptions of Ukraine, and to secure unprecedented levels of international support, from financial aid to military assistance. However, his story is also complex. Critics argue that his government has struggled with corruption, wartime restrictions on freedoms, and controversial military decisions. This means his historical legacy may be debated for decades. Was he the heroic defender of democracy, or a leader whose symbolic actions sometimes came at heavy costs? Looking ahead, Zelensky's future and Ukraine's destiny remain deeply interconnected. If Ukraine secures victory and regains its territories, his role in rebuilding the nation will define his second chapter as a statesman. His leadership will be tested in reconstructing war-torn cities, reviving the economy, strengthening democratic institutions, and guiding Ukraine toward European Union and NATO membership. Even if he chooses to step down after the war, Zelensky's influence will not fade. He is likely to remain a powerful global voice for freedom and human rights. The ultimate question of his future lies in whether he can turn Ukraine's wartime sacrifices into a foundation for long-term peace, stability, and prosperity. Either way, Zelensky's name is already etched into history, not just as Ukraine's president, but as a global leader whose fight became a symbol of democracy's survival in the 21st century. Volodymyr Zelensky's story is far from over. History will remember him not only as Ukraine's president during its darkest hour, but as a man who stood when many expected him to fall. His true legacy, that will be decided by the battles yet to come and the future his people will build. What do you think Zelensky's place in history will be? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of the world's leaders.